Welcome to the fourth episode of the Reserve Squad. The Reserve Squad today has a smaller panel than normal. Just three of us today. We have Andy, Tyler, myself, Cameron here. We have some big things to talk about with match week 34 and 35 coming to an end. Sorry for getting to you a little bit later than normal. Just life happens. So let's get this started. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about the rundown of the games. We have the Battle for Europe, relegation, Golden Boot update if we can get to it. And at the end of the day, you need to make sure you follow us on Instagram at The Reserve Squad and YouTube, The Reserve Squad. So please check us out, give us a follow, subscribe, whatever you need to do to get us on your radar. Do it. It's a good time. So the rundown, the beginning of last week, we had match week 34. And some of the big games, not going to touch them all. Spurs, Everton, 1-0. Watford, Norwich, 2-0. Chelsea beating Palace, 3-2. Arsenal, Leicester tying in a 1-1 draw. Burnley beating West Ham, which comes into play more in the relegation battle. It'll 1-0 win there. Sheffield beating Wolves in a huge European game, 1-0. And Bournemouth tying Spurs, 0-0. Take that as you want there. Another relegation point taken. And match week 35, we have a lot more big headlines and that kind of build up for our next few weeks here. So Watford beat Newcastle 2-1, so 2 wins in a row in the relegation fight there. West Ham beating Norwich 4-0. Michael Antonio getting his first hat trick, so gotta love that. Sheffield beating Chelsea 3-0. So huge week for Sheffield when you look at the European kind of battle, even though they still have an uphill fight. Wolves bouncing back and beating Everton 3-0. Spurs beating the Gunners in a North London derby 2-1, and a huge Bournemouth win of 4-0. So over Leicester. So of all teams, so crazy game, and I hope you all got to watch it. It was just an interesting second half. And United 2-2 draw with Southampton, another thriller. And take that one as you want. A great game. So maybe not the best effort from United, but a good game in general. Southampton was ready. So in other news, we have this Manchester City ban and how that affects Europe. So their Champions League ban has been overturned. They are now able to compete in the Champions League. So that really affects us and everything that's going on. And who is going to get into Europe this year and for next year, excuse me. So in saying that, Tyler, who is on your radar to get in to Europe?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting battle. I think with the whole city ban going on and everything really tightening up, I think the key players are really going to be Leicester and Wolves. For me, Wolves are on my radar. I really like them. I think they do have a little bit of an uphill battle just because, they're going to have to play Chelsea in the last week. And that's going to be a tough game. I think that when you look at the last match day, we'll get there in a few weeks from now, but that's going to be a really, really crucial, pivotal point for them. And they're going to have their guys like Adama Traore step up and really start to create chances because, Burnley and Palace are the other two games they got to go through. Burnley's not a joke. And I know Palace has been in rough form. You show out the jersey. I do think they end up getting the win on Palace, but I think that game against Burnley is really going to define how they move forward, what their momentum looks like, and whether they can continue to have that. Not only that, but they're fighting for a 5th, 6th spot. If they end up in a place like 6th, which is where they're sitting right now, that's not guaranteed Europe. So I think that they really need to focus in on getting as many points as they can and seeing what they can do in the Europa tournament as well. But I definitely think that they stand out as the team for me to have my eye on because if they can move up into that battle, it's going to knock someone like Leicester, United, or Chelsea out.
Now, in saying that, I'm not trying to put you on the Wolves spot here, but they're also in Europa League right now. So is it kind of in your mind that somehow, some way they're going to get in, or do you think it's really on the bubble and you're just unsure still?
I'm a little bit unsure. I think the reason why they're my team to watch is because I'm unsure. If anything, I would almost lean like I think that they have an uphill battle When you look at some of the remaining schedules of the other teams and where they're sitting at and how many points behind they are, I think it's going to be tough for them. But I think that the thing that stands out to me the most is they're going to be within that 4th, 5th, 6th range, which is going to be the most crucial range to be in. And like I said, 6th place isn't necessarily guaranteed. I'm not 100% sure if they're going to end up in 5th or 4th, and it's up to them to really figure out how well they want to play and how much they want to get there.
Definitely. I agree on that. I think they have maybe the most lucrative spot, you could say, because
Right.
they're in Europe and they have a chance, whereas other teams are outside looking in already.
Well, and that's another factor too, right? If they don't do well, right, they end up in, say, 7th place or they have a bad form, there's still that chance that they could win Europa and take the spot and make the qualification. So they've got multiple avenues, which is, and where they're sitting at and all those different avenues, I think lucrative was the perfect word as to why they stand out to me.
Definitely. How do you think United ties in with Wolves? Anything in particular that's going to affect them?
I think United, I don't know if you want to call it bold or what. I think they end up 3rd, which may surprise people. But I think United, they have Palace, West Ham, and Leicester remaining. I think they win out. I really do. I think that they beat Palace. I think that they handle West Ham. And going into that last game against Leicester, they're going to have a 6-point momentum swing, and it's really going to be their destiny to control. And I think that specific game, along with the Wolves game against Chelsea that I mentioned, those are going to be the 2 games to watch in the last week. But I think United get it done. I think they kind of had a little bit of a wake-up call against Southampton. I think they needed that. And I think they're going to turn it around, close out the season really strong, and end up 3rd place and in Champions League. And because of that, I think it makes it that much harder for Wolves to make it.
Yeah. Kind of on the same lines with your thoughts on United, but I think there's some things that are talking points here. Andy, Pogba had a rough game. I didn't get to see it. I was watching our chat blow up. What do you think about the midfield and what they need to look for moving forward?
So I think the draw with Man United, the problem was Southampton came in with a great tactic. I'll be the first person to say that Southampton came in very strong. They clouded the midfield. They made it really tough for Pogba and all those midfielders in order to segue the play from our defensive third to our offensive third. I mean, in the first 15, 20 minutes of that game, United could not get out of their opposing third. So I think that when you kind of talk about where United could finish here, I think the biggest thing to look out for is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, because I think that as we go into the last 3 games of this season, he hasn't really had to come up with a ton of tactics or, look at a game in a specific way and set up the team that way. And now that a team has kind of exploited United and showed that crowding the midfield is definitely a weak area for us because we can't transition that play upwards, I think he's got to keep that in the back of his head, and he's got to be able to counter that specific tactic if another team were to develop that. So I think as teams are starting to figure out United and how they're kind of approaching with this highly offensive style, I think it's really going to depend on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to keep his team intact, brush off this tie, and make sure that they're able to see the rest of the season out. And you would say that the fixtures definitely suit them. So
yeah, good stuff.
Adversity. Adversity, right? I think is the first time in a while that United has really faced some adversity during a game. Pogba and Bruno specifically, they looked a little bit frustrated, but I think to your point, Andy, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to look back at that, almost have some game film to review and get with guys like Bruno and Pogba and say, what do we need to do and tighten it up? And I think that's why they do turn it around.
Now, on that note, I think United still should have won that game. They missed 2 chances. Rashford in something in the 70th minute time frame they missed, and I know there was an early miss as well that Andy was not happy with as a fan of the team. But I don't remember who it was, but I know there was a chance there in the beginning. So, I still think they could have walked away with a win there. So, that changed.
They definitely could have walked away with a win there. And I mean, you look at the individual performances. Bruno Fernandes definitely didn't have his best game. Pogba made a few kind of key mistakes, but we definitely had the chance creation. So you can't say that there weren't opportunities or there weren't chances. I think it was just kind of an off day for United and a day that Southampton was very well prepared, and they came in with a good strategy. They executed, and it threw us for a loop.
Definitely. Now, one other team, Tyler, I want to focus on with you is the Gunners. The Gunners probably don't have a chance on points to get in, but do you think they can sneak in on the FA?
I think it's an interesting thing to mention, and it kind of ties into what I was saying with Wolves and how that 6th spot, they're not necessarily guaranteed. I think a lot of people out there don't necessarily know the intricate details of how teams get into Europe and Champions League, and most of the time they just assume 5th and 6th are automatically in because most of the time that's what happens. But what it actually comes down to is the FA Cup. 6th spot generally goes to the FA Cup. So if someone in the top 6 wins the FA Cup, then 6th place would qualify. But if someone outside of the top 6 wins the FA Cup, like Arsenal would get that spot instead of Wolves, which is a very interesting topic to think about because Wolves could end up in 6th spot, that lucrative position, and not make Europa if someone like Arsenal wins the FA Cup. So I think it's something that should be on everyone's radar. And I don't know the realistic chances that Arsenal have simply because they're going up against City right now. And even if they do somehow take down City, they've still got United and Chelsea to go. That being said, they don't really have much else to play for. And all 3 of those teams that are still in the FA Cup do have a lot more to play for. They're all in the points battle. City's got UEFA Champions League right around the corner. And coming off the ban, they know they're not going to have to really worry about it too much. So I'm not sure the FA Cup's going to be a huge priority for them as much as it should be Arsenal. So I think that there's a small chance that Arsenal could do it and really, really shake things up. But ultimately, I don't think they get it done. I actually think City is going to take them down and end that. But I would love to see it happen just for the shakeup. I would love to see it happen.
Definitely. And Andy, who do you think you need to be watching? Like, if you're a Premier League fan right now, who's on your radar? Who do you think is the team to watch?
I think the team to watch is Leicester, and not even for positive factors in any way, shape, or form. They've been pretty terrible since the restart, and with the crazy fixtures that they have upcoming, I mean, you just have to watch them because they're pretty much dictating their own future, and they're dictating the future of a ton of other clubs too because they had such a high points number before the restart, and then their form just completely crumbled. I mean, if you look at them when they played Arsenal, they luckily got away with that one goal against Arsenal to tie it with a draw, and then that loss to Bournemouth. They dictated for 60 minutes. They ran that entire field. They scored that one goal from Vardy, but then the PK happened, and their momentum completely floundered, and then they ended up losing 4-1. And Sionku also got a red card that game. That was a straight red, so he's out for 3 games, which is the rest of the season. That is absolutely massive when you have someone who is his next best man being Johnny Evans, who scores an own goal that game. And Johnny Evans isn't exactly the best center half on that team. So you have to figure when you're looking at Leicester, who have Sheffield United, Tottenham, and then Manchester United on the last day, without their star center back on the field. You have Vardy missing sitters in the first half of the game against Bournemouth, although he is obviously the leading goal scorer. But you just have to say that with Leicester's form, they're going to be the team to watch just because of all the fixtures that they have coming up. And I think, honestly, this game against Sheffield United is going to be the biggest one for all of them. Because I think Sheffield is definitely a highly defensive team. And so Leicester have to come at this highly rated defense who has let the least amount of goals in throughout the rest of the season. They have to be able to produce that, and they have to keep up that high energy against a strong defensive team. So I'm really excited for the Sheffield game this week.
Yeah. Do you think they can draw points from Spurs or United? Like, do you think they can grab 2 points? Like, any thoughts on their next 2 as well?
I think if Leicester are able to pull up a big win against Sheffield, I think there's a good chance that they can still keep themselves up. I think the game against Man U is really going to be tough for them. They need to figure out their defensive shape, and they're going to have to come in with a tactic. But Brendan Rodgers is definitely not a manager that is not familiar with the Premier League. He definitely knows his stuff. I think he could come out with a good tactic against United in that last day, and it just depends on, in my opinion, like I said earlier, whether Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is going to come up with a strategy that will be able to counter that, and that's where his managerial skills will come to play. So Leicester can do it. I just happen to think that with their form and the schedules that they have left, I don't see them dictating it. But this is football. Anybody can score, and anybody can win on any given day.
Yeah, and Sheffield, right? They play them this week. What are your thoughts on the Sheffield's chances of getting into any European competition?
I think Sheffield have a good chance. The biggest thing is they need a good result against Leicester because they have Everton and Southampton, their remaining games. So there definitely is a chance for them to move up. They're a little bit reliant on a couple teams above them to lose a couple games. But if they're able to pull out a big win against Leicester, I think that they do have a good chance of moving up because there are some interesting games in these last 3 weeks of fixtures.
Definitely.
Or match days, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, Everton and Southampton are definitely 2 teams they can take 6 points away from. So if you see draws at the top, maybe you're in a whole different topic of discussion here for Europa League, right? Who knows? It's going to be crazy, and I'm super excited about it. And when you talk about Brendan Rodgers and the frustration that must have been going through him, that's what I think of when you see the Soyuncu mistake. And then that leads me kind of to the team that I think is on my radar, and that's Chelsea. They're another team that are kind of bobbling here. And, how good they're going to do. Fortunately, today, they walked away in match week 36 with a win, and now they can watch the teams to see what they do. But I still don't think Lampard knows what he wants out of his team. I think that he said today in an interview that he's focused on FA Cup. Now, I don't want to say that I don't believe him, but with the team that he's got that he's putting together next year and all the product that he is coming in, I think that with that personnel, you got to be thinking Champions League, semifinals, quarterfinals. Like, they need some pieces, right? But I think it's tough to believe him when he says he's focused on the FA Cup. The only reasoning I have is that he wants a trophy in his first year there. So to me, it's kind of he's got some battles probably going on in his own head on what he wants. But they had an interesting week, so I think Chelsea is another one to watch. They have upcoming. I don't know. Their strength of schedule is okay. I mean, Wolves, that's going to be one where they could walk away with a draw, and they hurt one another. So,
right.
I think the biggest thing when you're thinking about Chelsea,
too, because Liverpool's their other fixture they got to play, and at this point in the season, you just don't know which Liverpool you're going to go up against. So I think that that's an important game that they're going to have to find a way to get points in too. But Andy, I know you were about to make a point there as well.
Yeah, I was actually just about to talk about the Liverpool game, and that's going to be the biggest thing for them. I mean, the thing is that they can because the Liverpool game, a lot of people are already kind of chalking that up as a loss with how great of a team Liverpool is, but I definitely think Chelsea can come through and win that game, especially with them with Liverpool having a tie earlier in the week and their home game win streak being snapped. You could definitely feel that there's a little bit of uneasy in the dressing room and a little bit of disappointment to not pull out that result. So I mean, I fancy Chelsea could win that game potentially, and I feel like even a draw would be solid for them.
Yeah.
But I do think that Chelsea, with everything to play, and the Liverpool side, who really have nothing to play for the rest of the season because they're already champions, you definitely fancy Chelsea to pull that out. But that's what it's going to come down to me, is that's a big result for them.
I think you're right. I think both of you are right. Touching on that game, I think it's important that they had Norwich on their schedule. Those 3 points are huge, not because they're guaranteed points, but because it was an early game, and now they can sit back and watch and figure out what's going to happen next throughout the week, right? So that's huge. Other teams now have the pressure on them. Chelsea had a relaxed week. They walked away with a 1-0 win today. To start off match week 36. No one's impressed, but it doesn't matter at this point. So I just
have to say a 1-0 win is not commanding of enough of a team like Chelsea, especially up against the last place Norwich, who we all know got relegated. I mean, to only win 1-0 and to have Giroud be the one to score it, who hasn't even been in its side a whole lot other than coming on as a super sub for the most part. Chelsea do have a little bit of goal scoring issues right now, so that definitely could play a factor in it.
And I think Giroud's been hot since Project Restart. Tammy's got 1 goal, I think, since Project Restart. I could be wrong on that. So Giroud's their striker right now, with Werner coming in next year. That's a whole other topic of discussion. But Giroud always gets it done in the Premier League. It's just his thing. So having him on the field today was important, but I still think you're right. Maybe all that production in the midfield, they're still working out some kinks. So I think they're on the bubble. They really are. I think regardless, they're going to get Europa just because of where they are in the table right now. But it just, can they hold on to that Champions League spot? We'll see. So that's the top. We got a lot going on at the bottom. My goodness, do we have a lot. I think that it's been a great week. I think everyone's happy with their week other than Norwich and Brighton. So Brighton got dragged back in. Norwich is relegated. We have West Ham and Watford on 34, Brighton on 36, Bournemouth on 31, Villa on 30, Norwich relegated at 21. And before we get too into detail here on everything, Brighton's not really on our docket for topic of discussion here. They have an interesting few upcoming games as well. Ones where they might be able to kind of really pull away. They play Newcastle, so that's big. And Burnley, if they can beat Burnley, it's a solid win. Even grab a point there. So we'll see what happens with Brighton. But Andy, what do you think about Bournemouth? Do you think they're a good week, bad week?
Bournemouth, I would say Bournemouth had a pretty good week. I mean, they were able to pull up a big result against Leicester. I mean, that was definitely a fixture that everyone put Leicester as winning that game. And, for 60 minutes of that game, it was not going in Bournemouth's favor. But, as it kind of turns out, one red card and one bad mistake causes a penalty, and then it forces a red card, and, their whole entire momentum shifted. So they were able to pull up a pretty big result against Leicester. And so I think that's pretty huge. So, they're definitely going to want to carry that momentum into their last few games, but they do have a pretty tough schedule coming up. They have City, I believe that game is tomorrow. Southampton, who obviously just played a really good Manchester United with a great setup. They have them right after that, and then Everton. So, they have pretty much the former champions in City, and then they have some pretty strong lower upper half table teams in order to go up against. To be honest, I really don't see Bournemouth being able to stick into the Premier League. I think that just with their schedule coming up and the form that they've been in, it hasn't really been positive for them. So there is a possibility that they could. Aka has had a great season so far, so I think there's a possibility that he could potentially go somewhere else. And he was really the most vibrant player in that team against the Leicester side, and he's the center half captain. So that's really interesting to see.
I definitely agree. He stopped a shot early in the game, I think, to save it from going 1-0 down. Yeah. And I don't want to say it's a game changer because it wasn't. There was other mistakes made, but at that point it was. And Bournemouth, they took a point from Spurs, I believe, earlier in the week too. Yeah, nothing on Thursday. So they had a great week. 4 points out of 6. You got to be happy when you're fighting. I think, to me, and Tyler, I don't know if you want to piggyback on this, but to me, it's their goal differential. Right now, they're at 24. So with Watford at 21 and Villa at 27, it kind of gives them that buffer from Villa. And if Watford have a bad week or two upcoming, I don't know. Maybe Bournemouth sneaks by. I don't know.
What worries me about Bournemouth is just that they don't have a set striker, and that's kind of been the biggest issue for them recently. I mean, Solanke, he's been okay. He's been in decent form as of the last couple of weeks. But for me, one big stat that I took from the Bournemouth-Leicester game, and when you look at the fixtures that Bournemouth has coming up with City, Southampton, and Everton, all of them quality sides. Bournemouth's first shot in the first half came in extra time of the first half. So that's 45 minutes they went without pulling out one single shot. And if they weren't able to do that against Leicester, I have a very hard time believing they're going to do that against City. And that leaves Southampton and Everton all tough games for them to face at the end of the season in order to be able to pull it out. So, I mean, if they're able to pull up a really big win on a City or a Southampton going into Everton, I think they might have a chance, but the fixtures definitely aren't on their side.
Definitely. Tyler, you have any Bournemouth thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting you point out the goal differential. I think that's definitely something to take into account because when you're coming off a week where you get 4 out of 6 points, those are the weeks that make a difference when you're talking about the bottom of the table. And something as little as 1 point or 1 goal differential could be the deciding factor. Andy, you talk about their strength of schedule being pretty tough. I think that's kind of a common theme with a lot of these teams at the bottom of the table going in the last 3 games. And so I think not necessarily for Bournemouth specifically, but for the entire bottom of the table, it's going to be who can beat one of the tougher teams and carry some momentum throughout the rest of the season, if anyone. It's possible they all struggle and nothing changes.
Yeah.
But, I think when you're looking at a team like Bournemouth, I think they're in an opportunity sitting in that 18th spot. They've got a tough schedule. I know we're going to touch on Watford a little bit more. They've got a tough schedule coming up too. I think with their goal differential, that's an important piece to point out because if they get those crucial points, they're 3 behind Watford. That's one more good week, 2 more good games, and they're in the Premier League. But I kind of agree with Andy. I just don't really see it happening. I don't see Bournemouth staying in. I think they're going to go down.
They have to win that game against Southampton, in my opinion, if they're going to have a chance. They have to win that game. And if Southampton come playing like they did against United, I think that'll definitely be a tough task. Agreed. But I think Bournemouth can pull it out for sure. I mean, Solanke is a decent striker. He can get into form. He's just not like a Premier League top quality player. But I think they can catch Southampton if the Southampton's not fully prepared for that game.
Yeah, and I think too when you touching on Southampton one more time. Before the United game, they were in good form. So I think that I think right now where they're at going into the end of the season, I think they're one of the teams that you don't want to go up against, and I think City is as well. And for those two reasons alone, not even mentioning Everton, I don't see Bournemouth moving up.
I think to Southampton point, the Premier League mid-table and like lower top table for the first time looks like the championship. There's Southampton's in 12th on 45 points, and Wolves are in 6th on 55. So, they're 3 poor, mistakes maybe in games away from being right up there as well. So Southampton is definitely the team I don't want to be playing right now, especially with Danny Ings. When our chat the other day, I was like, he's got like an 80% chance of scoring in every game. It's just like you never know with him. He's always getting on the board. He's just that type of striker. And talking about Bournemouth and goal production and goal differential, I bring it up because Watford don't have any goal production at all, and they're sitting only 3 goals ahead of them. I think, look, if I'm Watford and I'm Bournemouth, I'm scared no matter what. If I'm West Ham, maybe I'm feeling okay. If I'm Brighton, I'm feeling great. But with no goal production on Watford, it's tough to really believe that they have what it takes to get out of it. So I think like there might be a team that sneaks by here that shouldn't, and I hate to say that, but it's how it goes this year. I think it's crazy that when you think Watford did have a huge week, and Danny Welbeck bite kick, that was
his first Premier League goal in what, like 2 years, 3 years, something like that.
2018 maybe. That might have been. Don't quote me on that. Maybe 2017. But yeah, 2-1 over Norwich. And then, walk away with a 2-1 win at Newcastle on 2 penalties, I believe. So Craig Dawson has 2 goals too. No goal productions coming from them, and Craig Dawson's like leading Project Restart goals for you. So I think it's bleak for Watford. They might be able to sneak by only because of Bournemouth and Villa's schedule. But Friday, time will tell. And because of Friday, well, actually, before I move on, Andy, were you about to say something?
Nope.
Okay. So
I can piggyback for one thing with Watford. You mentioned that they had a good week and in good form, and in terms of points, they did. But when you talk about beating a Norwich team, that doesn't say anything. And you talk about getting 2 goals, both of them being penalty kicks. It further points out what you mentioned about their lack of production on offense. And I think you're right. I think it looks bleak for them, but having that 3-point gap, it might just be enough with the way the schedules look.
Yeah,
Who knows?
And it's not like they're even in good. They're not in good form. They've had a fortunate week, and they've grinded it out. So you got to give them credit. But Friday they have West Ham, and we're going to talk about that in a few moments' time. But on West Ham, Tyler, do you have any information on them and their relegation fight?
Yeah, I think they're safe. I think they control their own destiny. And the reason I say that is because we've just sat here and we talk about Bournemouth and we talk about Watford and how poor they look and how hard their schedule looks. And here's West Ham. They're also sitting at 34 points right there with Watford. So we'll touch on that specific game in a second. But after the Watford game, they've got a tough matchup against United and then a matchup against Villa. So when you look at the bottom 6, however many teams you want, when you've got a game coming up against Watford and a game coming up against Villa, that's 2 out of your last 3 matches against other teams that are fighting for it. I just think that that's favorable regardless of the form. And I think West Ham's in pretty damn good form. I think you look at a guy like Declan Rice, he's on fire. Antonio coming off a hat trick. I just don't think – I can't imagine West Ham getting relegated when everything we just talked about with the other teams is so negative, and West Ham seems to be on the opposite side. If anything, I would almost argue that West Ham could move up and try to challenge Brighton for that spot for a little bit of extra cushion. And they're tied with Watford. I think that this game against Watford is going to be huge. I think if Watford upsets and beats West Ham or even gets a point against West Ham, then I think my take on this is going to very quickly become different. Just because that's how the momentum is going to shift. But I think for right now, the way it's looking at how bleak Watford look and how positive West Ham has been over the last couple weeks, I think West Ham beats Watford. I think they solidify their spot in the Premier League, and I think it causes Watford some issue moving forward after that.
Got 2 predictions, Andy. We got to hold them accountable to. And Frankie, when you hear it, make sure you do as well. West Ham safe. West Ham beating Watford. So No, that's
That
good.
game could go either way, in my opinion, man. That it really could. It really could. Because I think West Ham have also been in such great form that, I mean, you figure that they're maybe a little bit going to their head a little bit. They're feeling a little bit of safe, and that little bit of complacency could definitely bite them.
Here's my take on West Ham. We talked about it last week. How can you not be a fan of them right now? They're fun to. They're the only team at the bottom that look even willing to win, and you love to see it. And David Moyes is like the worst luck ever. So it's like somehow he has like some of the top 5 wins as a manager, But like, it's just crazy. Like he's the right guy to pull it together. Antonio scoring goals like never before from what I've seen personally. Their defense is solid right now. They're moving the ball well through the midfield. West Ham versus Villa. I don't even know if that's going to be a blowout. West Ham win 5-0, or if it's going to be like a 2-1 Villa win. I just can't tell.
You never know what you're going to get with Villa.
Yeah, you do. No goals.
Well, what I mean is when they're facing bottom 6 teams, they seem to score every once in a while. All it takes is one shot from Grealish the right way, and there's the only goal in the game.
You're not wrong. So let's go ahead and move on to that game on Friday. We got one prediction on the who's going to win. What do you have a score on that, Tyler? West Ham, Watford.
I go 2-1. I think it's an interesting situation. I think because they're at a point now, I think goals are just going to be scored a little bit more than usual. And when you're at the bottom 3 games of the table, you have to score goals or you're going to get relegated. And I think West Ham gets one early. And then, the rest of the game is kind of a battle for possession and a battle for control and what happens from there. And then maybe Watford ties it in the second half and you're looking for a late goal from West Ham and they get it. That's how I feel it's going to go. Completely, off the rail there. But I think 2-1 is going to be a goal scoring, game-winning goal score from someone like Antonio to dramatically make West Ham the safe haven spot.
I'm just thinking, I can't believe you have Watford scoring.
I know.
Craig Dawson, Danny Welbeck, who's getting on the board?
I don't know who's getting on the board, but it's probably going to come from a West Ham mistake because West Ham always likes to make it interesting, don't they?
They really do. They really do. Andy, who's your winner on Friday?
I also got 2-1, but I got Watford winning this one. Ooh. I really got Watford winning this one. I think Troy Deeney's going to come through on a very surprising game. What? It's interesting because just with how the EPL, the top part of the table, and the relegation battle, anything could change in any second. And so I'm kind of the opinion now when I'm looking at the Premier League and how it's winding down, there are going to be upsets. And I think that's one of those upsets. West Ham is definitely the team in form. So you definitely figure that they'll have a pretty good opportunity to win this game. But I think Watford are going to see this as an opportunity because this is a game that they're going to need to win in order to keep themselves up. And, I think that this is going to be the game to do it. And I think that West Ham have been such good form that I think that their spell could fall off here.
This is one of those games where I wish there was fans there. You have Watford just outside London. You have East London at London Stadium, the old Olympic Park. So it just would have been a great atmosphere for a game. And, this is where I get bummed that there's not going to be. And because of that, I think West Ham aren't going to feel the pressure as much. Not having fans there, I think, helps some of these bottom table teams. And I think West Ham wins 2-0, and but it wouldn't surprise me if it's like a 1-1 draw. It really wouldn't. But I think West Ham wins 2-0 because their defense and they don't make dumb mistakes on defense like penalties. Like they don't give away a lot of penalties lately. They more of just get caught up field and they don't get back. Watford can't produce goals without penalties and Craig Dawson. So I just don't see it happening.
Let me ask you guys a question. So I'm going to pose this question. Cam, you take it from the point of view that you're West Ham's manager, and Andy, you take it from the point of view that you're Watford's manager. You're in the 75th minute, going in the last 15 minutes of the game, and you're tied 1-1. Both of you guys are sitting at 34 points, with Bournemouth at 31 points, creeping up behind possibly. Do you go for the win, or are you happy with the draw?
Hold on, let me see what times the games are played. I think it's going to come down to that, what's happened already, because David Moyes is always going to play defense. So, maybe you throw on someone young to see what they can do, but I just don't think outside their starting lineup they really have a lot of goal production anyways.
So
So
you'd
I think
rather
that
play it safe and keep the guaranteed point.
I didn't say that's what I'd want. I said that's what I think is gonna happen. I think you got to
Okay.
go. Why are you in the Premier League if you're not gonna? You've been going for it
Okay.
since Project Start. Continue to do so. But it wouldn't surprise me if Moyes plays it safe. Good question.
All right. I got you on this one. So here's what I'm thinking. Watford's going to win this game. And the way you have to look at it is look at their upcoming fixtures, and they're in the spot that's like right on the bubble of getting into the relegation zone. They have West Ham in that game, then they have City and Arsenal. Those are games that you know that they're not expecting to pick up points. So you know that they're riding a lot on this West Ham game. So if they are tied at 1-1 in the 70th minute, I fancy them going in fully offensive, going to score goals. A loss there would definitely be risky, but you look at the remaining fixtures, and those are tough games to get good results on. So I think that they're definitely going to be they have a lot more at stake in this West Ham game than West Ham do at this current state, and that's why I think that they're going to go a little bit offensive.
That's a valid point, and it kind of even strengthens my position of Villa in the last day. You take that point away from Watford, and then hope you can gain it back at Villa. As a West Ham manager. So, I don't know. I don't know. Good question. That's a good question. What do you think, Tyler?
I think it's interesting. I think, like you said, I think West Ham are in a position to be able to play it a little safer because of their schedule. But I think it's a high risk, high reward situation. I think so I'll kind of play it from both perspectives. From the Watford perspective, I 100% agree with Andy. I think they absolutely are in a position they have to go for it. They're not going to pick up points against City. I doubt they're going to pick up points against Arsenal. It depends on which Arsenal we get, but I doubt they're going to pick up points against Arsenal. So I think they go for it. And if you're West Ham and you know that, I think you could actually counter that. If you see them make an offensive sub, you could say, hey, let's play a little defense, try to keep the point, but let's counter if we get the chance. And I think you're in a position to where you could counter Watford and end their season right then and there. And I think that could be an interesting situation. If I was David Moyes, I'd have my eyes open on a counter opportunity. Maybe some pace to come on up top to be an outlet for the counter.
And if I'm right on my thoughts, Watford's been very bad at counters, and West Ham has been playing a defensive shell all season. Or since Moyes took over. So I think you're right. It might be the right, formula for disaster if Watford do sub on someone like Danny Welbeck, who's not starting.
Right.
Right?
But it's a risk that Watford have to take.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that Frankie has West Ham winning because they're just too hot right now. He's not here to give his take, but his predictions.
That's fair.
West Ham wins, they're too hot. Watford don't have a chance. So, Andy, you're on your own.
Troy Deeney, game-winning goal. Get ready for it. The man out of form will score. Watch.
And it's a great stadium. Like, it's one of those stadiums like you want to see in the Premier League every year, It's just got that, like, atmosphere, even in COVID, I guess, But, so it's just, I don't know. I hate to see Watford go down. So, Frankie's predictions in. We don't really have a score for him. We didn't really discuss that. That's kind of something we threw out there. So, let's move on to Golden Boot. So, we have Danny Ings and the very, very hot Southampton on 19 goals. And I believe Salah as well, Mo Salah, on 19. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets even up in the mix a little bit more. Aubameyang is on 20, and Vardy has 23. So, we have an update. Andy, you had Ings on 19. How you feeling about, winning the Golden Boot last week? How do you feel?
Feeling pretty good. I'm not going to lie. They got Bournemouth coming up. I have a feeling Danny Ings is going to be putting on a clinic over there. I think what's going to happen is Southampton are going to get on the forefront of Bournemouth on that second-to-last game, and I just think it's going to be Danny Ings who's just going to he's going to kill that game essentially. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. I know that Southampton do have some kind of tough fixtures coming up, so it definitely favors Vardy, and I guess the best way to put it would be it's really Vardy's Golden Boot to lose at this point with the good gap that he has. But yeah, you have to say though, with the fixtures that Vardy have coming up with Leicester, it's going to be tough for them to score goals against those sides, and let alone him being the person to do it.
So I like it. I think Ings with Brighton and Bournemouth has a great opportunity to snag maybe a brace and then a goal here and get to like 22. I don't know if it's enough. We'll find out. Tyler, Aubameyang, how you feel about that field? Because right now, I'm looking at their schedule and woo, you got a chance at catching Vardy.
Well, I think that last game against Watford is going to have to be something big for Aubameyang. I think that he's 3 goals down. So let's just be honest and say that it's Vardy's trophy to lose, right? I think it's in his control. 3 goals with 3 games to go is not a terrible lead to have. But I think if you're looking at Aubameyang, these next 2 games are against big teams. He's not necessarily known for putting a lot of goals away against big teams. Sometimes Lacazette comes up and scores against Liverpool instead. So I think the next 2 games for Aubameyang will either make or break whether he can stay in it. I think if he nets 1 or 2 in those, then going against Watford in the last week, I think Watford, I know we mentioned them. I honest to God think they're going to lose the rest of their games. They're going to be so deflated by the time they verse Arsenal that it's quite possible Aubameyang could throw down 3 goals and just steal it from Vardy. So I'm still sticking with Aubameyang. I'm gonna pull it out for him to go through, for him to pull it out and get it. But I think it's gonna be a little tough to beat Vardy. But I'm gonna stick with Aubameyang.
So I'm not leaving Vardy. Maybe going behind his back a little bit, but I'm not leaving Vardy. Aubameyang has Liverpool and Chelsea in the same week, but Chelsea is FA Cup, if I'm not wrong. So,
yep.
Maybe he leaves that game and doesn't. I mean, they want goals in that game, so we'll see how it goes. But Liverpool might be tough, but then he's got Villa and Watford. So
Arsenal have FA Cup too. Keep that in mind.
That's what I'm talking about, Arsenal. So
okay, yeah, both of them do.
If they play Villa right off the Chelsea game, so. If he can snag 2 against a poor Villa side and 2 against Watford, man, Vardy's got to be clicking at his heels a little bit, But Vardy's Vardy, and he's gonna make it work. He always does. He's gonna score a brace against United. Watch. Quote me on that, Andy. But so
I actually have a bold statement on that race. I happen to think Vardy's not going to score another goal the rest of the season.
Ooh.
So 24 is the key number then for you? 24 gets it done?
Quote that one. Yeah, I think so. I don't think Vardy's going to score. I think Leicester's turmoil is going to continue, and I don't see it turning around. And because the problem is, I feel like it's all going to come down to Vardy in that midfield in order to pull it out. And I just think it's going to be a really tough task for Vardy. And I just have this feeling that with their recent form, I don't think the spark is going to be there.
I think Vardy scores against Tottenham. I think it's hard to not see it happening.
In a VAR call?
I don't know. Don't do that. Vardy puts the ball in the net against big teams. So, it wouldn't surprise me if he scores against Tottenham and he scores a brace at United. It really wouldn't. I think 25 is the number still. Only because if someone catches them from behind, it's going to be 24 or 25. And I just don't, like to Andy's point, I don't see Vardy pulling away with it because who he does have on the schedule. So I still think Vardy takes it home. I don't think he doesn't score 3 and 3 or anything like that. And if Aubameyang scored 5 and 3, it wouldn't surprise me because he's got Villa and Watford, So we'll see how it goes, though. We'll see. That's it. Been fun. I think it's important. We missed one. We didn't miss it. It's important that we keep saying no to racism. With Wilfried Zaha, that's not something that should happen. And it's awfully hard to go through that. So it's going to be a talking point in the Premier League probably for a little bit longer. It was a kid, of course, that did it. That doesn't make it right, but it definitely makes it maybe tougher to swallow, especially if you're Wilfried Zaha. So I hope he's doing well. We all say no to racism, and we will catch you next week. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube at The Reserve Squad and follow us on Instagram at The Reserve Squad. So it's been fun, boys. Looking forward to match week 36 and the FA Cup and, our thoughts there. I hope you all have a great rest of your night. And, boys, it's been fun.
Always fun. Catch us on Transfer Tuesday as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, Transfer Tuesday. That podcast will be out. You guys throwing it out tonight, right?
Tonight or tomorrow. Look for it tonight or tomorrow.
Awesome. So watch out for Transfer Tuesday. It's always a big topic here. So much to talk about in the gossip and rumor mill. So everyone have a good night. We appreciate you listening. Signing off.